And as they pulled her limp, freezing frame onto the deck, the impossible happened. The woman suddenly convulsed and drew a violent gasp for air, and she began to cry. Hannah Upp would vanish 3 times over the course of 9 years, and each disappearance escalated in its severity. The captain of the Staten Island ferry noticed something strange in the gray, choppy waves. A human figure bobbing in the water just south of the Statue of Liberty. Floating face down in the Hudson River and wearing only red running shorts and a black sports bra, the woman appeared to be another casualty of New York City, barely visible to the naked eye against the vast expanse of the harbor. Horrified by the discovery and convinced that they had stumbled upon a corpse, the captain dispatched a rescue boat. 2 deckhands went through the turbulent water to retrieve her body. One deckhand gripped the woman firmly by her ankles, the other hoisted her by her shoulders. The aquatic resurrection of Hannah Upp was a cinematic miracle. Against all odds, the young woman had survived being in one of the most dangerous waterways in North America. As she opened her eyes to the towering skyline of New York City, a more terrifying mystery was born. The woman had absolutely no idea how she ended up in the river. In fact, from her perspective, only 10 minutes had passed since she had laced up her sneakers to go for a morning jog. In reality, she had been missing for almost 3 weeks. This was 23-year-old Hannah Upp, and her unbelievable rescue from the Hudson River catapulted her into the national spotlight. She hadn't been abducted, she hadn't been held captive in a basement, and she wasn't a victim of foul play. She was the captain of something much more insidious. Her own mind had taken over her body and piloted her through the chaotic streets of Manhattan for 20 days. The human brain is fragile, and the walls of Hannah's mind would eventually betray her again and again, culminating in a final disappearance from which she would never return. Before she became known by the media and internet sleuths as the woman who went missing 3 times, Hannah Emily Upp was a vibrant, driven individual. She was born on November 29, 1985 in Oregon, and she was the daughter of 2 Methodist ministers, James Upp and Barbara Bellis. She was integrated into Japanese-American churches where her parents served as pastors. Her mother, Barbara, spoke fluent Japanese and had spent a lot of time teaching in Japan, teaching Hannah an appreciation for different cultures and the beauty of a global life. But beneath the surface of her upbringing, there were internal pressures building up. The bedrock of her family life fractured when her parents divorced when Hannah was just 15 years old. And following the separation, her father James decided to relocate overseas to places like India, Guam, and eventually settling in the Philippines to continue his religious mission of spreading the gospel. James Upp held traditional conservative views on sexuality, believing that homosexuality was unnatural. And this was difficult for Hannah because as she grew into adulthood, she realized that she was attracted to women. She was forced to compartmentalize herself, and she hid her sexuality from her father to maintain their bond. And despite the toll of concealing this core aspect of her identity, she maintained a strong relationship with him, making the effort to travel across the globe to visit him at least once a year. From an academic and professional standpoint, Hannah was a success. She went to Bryn Mawr College, a prestigious school in Pennsylvania, graduating in 2007. She was passionate for education and social justice. And so she relocated to New York City, where she was your typical ambitious 20-something. She lived in the Hamilton Heights neighborhood of Upper Manhattan, pursuing a master's degree in education at Pace University while working demanding hours as a Spanish and middle school teacher at Thurgood Marshall Academy in Harlem. And she wasn't one to just work and study. She also would volunteer for local aid organizations. By all accounts, Hannah was adored by everyone who crossed her. Friends, family, colleagues all described her as bright, funny, outgoing, and deeply passionate about her students. There were no publicized mental health crises, no substance abuse, no erratic and reckless behavior. She was stable for her middle schoolers, and she was a beloved fixture in her social circles. But the immense internal pressures of a demanding career in a challenging school district, perhaps with the lingering trauma of her family, were culminating, setting the stage for a catastrophic break with reality. Your brain relies on an uninterrupted, seamless stream of autobiographical memory to anchor what is the concept of yourself. Every morning we wake up and we download our history, our names, our relationships, our responsibilities. But when extreme stress and trauma threaten to shatter the psyche entirely, the brain sometimes enters a radical protective emergency override. And in the case of Hannah Upp, this override was a exceptionally rare psychiatric disorder. A dissociative fugue is categorized as a severe subset of dissociative amnesia. It affects approximately 0.2% of the general population. And the condition is categorized characterized by the sudden, temporary loss of one's identity, frequently accompanied by travel, or what the DSM-5 describes as bewildered wandering. A person in a dissociative fugue appears entirely normal, high-functioning, to random people. And this is because the brain partitions memory. Sufferers lose their declarative memory, the facts about who they are, but not their procedural memory, how to do things. They know how to use public transit systems, how to order food at a restaurant, how to talk to people, but they lack the fundamental context of their own existence. People might even adopt a new identity. For Hannah, the academic and professional stress of navigating a new job in New York City, coupled with deeply rooted internal conflicts with her family dynamic, may have overloaded her psychological circuits, triggering the initial fugue episode. There's no cure for dissociative fugue. Recovery of the identity happened spontaneously. For Hannah Upp, the tragedy of the diagnosis was the terrifying loss of time. Waking up from a fugue state is incredibly jarring. As she explained in an interview with the New York Times following her first rescue, entering the fugue state felt like a skip in a record. I went from going for a run to being in an ambulance. It was like 10 minutes had passed, but it was almost 3 weeks. The first fracture with reality happened on the morning of August 28th, 2008. She was 23 years old, and she stepped out of her Hamilton Heights apartment in Manhattan to go for a jog. She had left behind her apartment keys, her wallet, her ID, and her cell phone, which were out-of-character details that had set off alarm bells for her friends and family when she failed to show up for her first day of work. There was a massive search effort for her, and her face was broadcast across local news channels with reporters begging the public for any information. Her friends and coworkers and former classmates mobilized, plastering thousands of missing person flyers across New York City. Yet as the days bled into weeks, the city seemed to have swallowed her whole. Behind the scenes, a bizarre trail of breadcrumbs was emerging on city surveillance cameras. Hannah was actively, freely moving through the city in plain sight. Security footage captured her 10 days into her disappearance, entering an Apple store in Manhattan. She managed to log into her email account. She was also spotted at various New York gyms. For 19 to 20 days, she roamed the concrete jungle, where she slept, what she ate, how she used the subway system, and how she managed to go on without any money is a mystery that is locked inside her own brain. The adventure ended on September 16th, 2008, with her rescue from the freezing waters of the Hudson River by the Staten Island ferry crew. She'd be treated at a hospital for hypothermia and severe dehydration, and the pieces of the puzzle finally came together for her doctors. She was formally diagnosed with dissociative fugue. She was determined not to let her diagnosis dictate the terms of her life, so she made changes to her environment to mitigate stress. By 2010, she had left New York City, seeking tranquility and spiritual grounding at a Quaker study and retreat center outside of Philadelphia. And she later transitioned back into her passion for education, getting a job as a teaching assistant at a Montessori school in Kensington, Maryland. For nearly 5 years, Hannah lived a quiet, fulfilling life. But on September 3rd, 2013, the 28-year-old failed to arrive at her Maryland job. Alarm bells immediately rang for her family and the local authorities, all of whom were aware of her medical history. And the pattern was familiar. Hannah's wallet and phone were discovered discarded on a nearby footpath, indicating a sudden, unplanned departure into the void. Fortunately, the second disappearance was short-lived. On the evening of September 5th, just 2 days after entering the fugue state, Hannah found herself walking near the intersection of Georgia Avenue and Shorefield Road in the Wheaton-Glenmont area of Maryland, near a local creek. As she snapped back into place, she experienced the disorienting terror of realizing her mind had skipped time once again. She would immediately approach a passerby, borrow their cell phone, and call her mother, Barbara. Barbara frantically drove to the area and retrieved her daughter from the side of the road. During interviews with the Montgomery County detectives, Hannah tried to piece together her timeline. She explained that her last memory before the blackout was walking to Wheaton Plaza on the afternoon of Monday, September 2nd, where she had eaten lunch. After finishing her meal, she'd begin walking, and that's where the story ends, only to resume 48 hours later. She had no physical injuries and was able to recover at home with her family. In 2014, seeking a fresh start, Hannah relocated to the U.S. Virgin Island of St. Thomas. She got a job as a teaching assistant for preschoolers at the local Montessori school. Hannah loved the Caribbean. She immersed herself in the island's culture, dancing in the local Zumba troupe, swimming, snorkeling, and taking boat trips. The 32-year-old had found her paradise. But in September 2017, Hurricane Irma happened, a catastrophic Category 5 storm that struck St. Thomas on September 6th. The island was reduced to a post-apocalyptic landscape. Buildings were shredded, trees were uprooted, boats were tossed into the streets like toys, and the power grid was annihilated. Hundreds of residents fled the island, and while those who remained faced desperate resource scarcity and the trauma of surviving this historic natural disaster. Friends noticed that in the days following the hurricane, Hannah's demeanor shifted. She was distant, anxious. She wasn't acting like her normal, vibrant self. On the evening of Thursday, September 14th, 2017, amid the preparations for Hurricane Maria, which was barreling directly towards the island, Hannah left her home. She told her friend she was going for a morning swim at Sapphire Beach, but she never returned. As day turned to night, concern turned to panic when she missed a mandatory staff meeting at her school later that day. Her car was discovered parked near Sapphire Beach on Sunday, September 17th. Hannah had left behind her passport, credit cards, cash, phone, and ID. Down by the water, searchers found her sandals and keys stacked on a stool. The Virgin Islands Police Department launched a manhunt across the debris-littered island. However, the timing of this fugue state could not have been worse because of the approach of Hurricane Maria. The second Category 5 storm battered the island, washing away physical evidence and paralyzing the investigation for weeks. By the time the skies cleared and the search could resume, the trail had vanished into the sand. As of today, Hannah Upp remains a missing person, lost in the margins of her mind in the vast Caribbean Sea. Her 2017 disappearance triggered a wave of uncertainty for her family and friends, made worse by the logistic nightmare of investigating a disappearance on a disaster-ravaged island with no infrastructure. Refusing to give up on her daughter, Hannah's mother, Barbara, relocated to mainland St. Thomas to be closer to the ground zero of the search efforts. To help the police investigation, the family hired a private investigator to independently chase down leads, funding his efforts through a GoFundMe campaign fueled by thousands of supporters. Over the years, several unconfirmed sightings have given fleeting moments of hope into the investigation. During the St. Thomas Carnival in April 2018, searchers asked the public to keep a lookout, knowing that Hannah loved the event. Her former Zumba troupe even marched with a banner honoring her spirit. In March 2018, reports surfaced of a woman matching Hannah's description near the food center of the east end of St. Thomas, and another sighting occurred at the Oswald Harris Court, but both leads went cold. A grim development occurred in September 2018 when a human skeleton washed ashore on an uninhabited island off the coast of St. Thomas. Authorities considered the possibility that the remains belonged to Hannah. However, the body was so severely decomposed from the elements that medical examiners were unable to positively identify it, leaving the family in a purgatory of unresolved grief. Without a body or any sort of confirmed evidence of her survival, the lack of information has given birth to several theories regarding her fate. Drowning. The most probable theory is that Hannah entered the water at Sapphire Beach while in the throes of her fugue state, perhaps disoriented by her condition, or just maybe simply caught in the fierce hurricane-stirred undertows before Hurricane Maria. She may have drowned. The theory resembles her 2008 disappearance. Had the ferry captain not spotted her body in the Hudson River, she would have drowned then. In 2017, the Caribbean Sea had no ferries, so no saviors. And then there's the endless wanderer. Given the bizarre, highly functional nature of dissociative fugue, it's possible that Hannah survived the disappearance, adopted a completely new identity, is currently living off the grid. She could be working under the table on another island or living within a homeless community, completely unaware that she's a highly sought after missing person. She could have fled the island. Some believe that amidst the incredibly chaotic evacuations occurring during Hurricane Irma and Maria, Hannah could have boarded a relief vessel or a boat leaving St. Thomas. Without her passport or ID, traveling internationally would be nearly impossible, but the disaster protocols in place during the storms were disorganized, leading some to believe that she might have slipped through the bureaucratic cracks and was relocated to the mainland or Puerto Rico. Another theory is that it's a staged disappearance. However, those closest to Hannah dispute this. Her rich social life, her deep connection to her mother, and her passion for her students makes a staged disappearance unlikely. The tragedy of Hannah Upp goes beyond the borders of St. Thomas. Her story forces a confrontation with the fragility of the human mind. We believe that underneath our clothes, our jobs, that there is a concrete self. Hannah's condition shows us that identity can be vulnerable. Her story has become important for understanding the extreme fringes of psychiatric defense mechanisms. For her mother, Barbara, and the sprawling network of friends who loved her, the search is an act of faith. They operate under the heartbreaking belief that if anybody spots her, they must act with extreme caution, knowing she likely has no idea who she is. She is a ghost trapped in the machinery of her own brain. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please like, share this video. You can become a member of this channel if you'd like to support the channel. I would appreciate you considering this. You can also support the channel by liking, sharing, commenting on, and hyping up this video. And I do appreciate you watching my videos. And please, stay spooky.